Hello, crew. Hello, Silent Nikki. Um, Crew, I just watched your videos that you put up yesterday. It's Wednesday, the 18th of February, which is Taryn's 11th birthday. He's upstairs with his friend Jeff, having a great birthday time. Anyway, I wanted to go through and respond to Karoo's substantive yet pithy videos. I think those were very, you clearly had a purpose for both those videos, and it was right on point. Boom, 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 getting through them. So let's see if I can do this with your video. So first of all, crew, you sent me an article on John Green. So this is actually not a video response, but the article on John Green from the New Yorker. Great article. Thanks for sending that. I appreciate it. And yeah, I'm a longtime John Green fan. And it's interesting because, you know, the more you become a fan of somebody, often the more critical you are of them. And so it was kind of cool to read that article, and it talks about some of his mental health issues that he struggles with, and he's talked about before. It was a very, very good article. So, secondly, I want to apologize for not talking about your "but I take exception." Is that what you said, the video? You know which video I'm talking about. I've got to say that just killed me, cracked me up when I watched it. And I do watch your videos all the way through, and I watched it right before we went up to Pullman a couple weeks ago, and then I showed it to everybody in Pullman. And I just, you know, because nobody else is going to sit through it. It's like 17 minutes long or something, and which to me is the genius of it, because nobody else is going to see it. So I showed it to most of my family, who deeply appreciated it. Actually, Gareth was in here, and I started laughing hysterically, and he was like, "What? What's so funny?" And I said, "Come here and watch." And I put it back like 3 minutes before the payoff, so to speak. And Gareth was watching, and he's kind of like looking like, "Oh God, I'm bored." And then you got up and walked away, and he just cracked up. So it was awesome. I'm curious whether you were doing the Red Hot Chili Peppers at Abbey Road thing in that video. So I'd like to know more, really. Maybe sometime later. Nikki's Silence is my next list. And Nikki, I know that you're busy killing waterfowl and running benefit auctions. So I hope you're doing well. I hope everybody's having a good time, and I hope you're not feeling obligated by Karoo and I giving you a bad time about not making videos. Loser. Karoo, your video with the clips from you acting, I thought that was really cool. And actually, I remember you did put up some clips. I think you kept them unlisted from that play, it's pretty cool. I think it's interesting. You know, you talked about how you watch it and you kind of cringe at your acting, but you know, I think everybody does that regardless. You know, with music, I do the same thing. I have to, actually, in order to produce something recorded that can be watched multiple times, you know, I agonize over it. I'm like, oh, I think I'm just a little pitchy on that note, and da-da-da-da. And then occasionally I'll come across something I've done not knowing what it is, you know, and it kind of pops up and takes me a minute to realize. And I think, oh, this sounds okay. And then I realize that it's something that I've done and that I was hypercritical of it. So I think often my point is that you're probably being hypercritical, and it's not as bad as you make it out to be. I thought you did a great job. I enjoyed it a lot. Yeah, my video where I'm on the AMT machine. So when I get up, I've been working out, as I said, every morning, and so I've gotten to the point where I have my computer up there, and I actually do emails, and I type on the big soccer bulletin board, and I watch YouTube videos, and that's what I do. The same thing I would do sitting here on the workout machine. And it's gotten to the point where I'm in good enough shape where I can do all that, and I still get the same workout I was getting before, which is good. So I figured I was in the cool down, and I just watched your video, and I thought I've just got to make. And I know I've got kind of a busy week. I'm actually starting to ramp back up on working on the Atlas, and there's some other stuff going on that I've obligated myself to. So I knew that I just had, especially Monday, not much time. So I figured I'd throw that video in, and. And you know, I could see myself in it. You know, I'm doing this capture on the computer, and I could see my head expanding and shrinking as I moved, as the computer's madly trying to use algorithms to stabilize me. So yeah, I thought that was pretty funny, and I'm glad it made you sick. More about the cognitive issues. You know, I think what it comes down to is that, you know, there's so much complexity in the world that our brain builds shortcuts to make things easier. So it creates bins, and if we recognize like one aspect of something that we think of in one category, it shortcuts the whole thinking process and places that thing in a category. And that's like the thing with the music, that the two pieces I was looking last night, because I had chorus again, and one's called We Shall Walk in the Valley of Peace, and the other thing is Shall We Go Down to the River or something. And so it was we shall and shall we, and I'm sure that my brain just saw the shall and we, and the order, you know, I think and it put that in the same bin as the we shall, and just like boom, I was moving on. And I think that's the same thing that happens, like you talked about calling Duncan Dan, and it's interesting because I call my oldest son Carew all the time, and I don't know why that happens, and it's like I put you guys in the same category. It's almost as if you had the same name. No, but seriously, I actually call my sons Tom a lot, and I think it's just like it's a close male relative or friend, and I call Bryn Linda. I call Sarah Linda sometimes, or vice versa. And the whole Freud thing, actually it's too bad that Freud, you know, looked at that and said, oh, it's all sexual, because, you know, Freud was an idiot, and was a slave to his animal desires and abused his position. But we won't talk about that anymore. So yeah, I do the same thing, and I think that's all that, it's all the liminality of category theory is what that's all about, in case you were wondering. You talk about, so it's interesting that you don't contradict me when I talk forcefully, and you know, I know that you've heard the story about, you know, when Sarah and I were having a conversation about culture shortly after we were married, and I was going through and talking forcefully to her, and I said culture doesn't exist, and she burst into tears. She was pregnant. But my dad recently told me that I am too forceful in the way I make arguments, and that I come across as a bully sometimes, and I think that's too bad that I do that, and I'm sorry, and I try, you know, I know that when I was in grad school, people often talk to me about how they appreciated the fact that if they challenged me, I would think about what they said and often change my point of view if they had a good point. And I did that enough that people noticed it. So, like I said, I honestly, I don't talk forcefully because I'm trying to win. I do it because I'm passionate, and because I think it helps clarify communication at times. But, you know, maybe I need to tone that down. So thanks for making me feel bad, jerk. You and my dad. Let's see. The backpacking trip. Yeah, it was an amazing trip. It was so fun. And the mix of people, Scott and Eric and Pat, was just a great mix. So Pat, well, first of all, let me go through my list, because otherwise I'll miss something. It's an easy walk. It's 5 miles, and it's relatively flat. It's like 200. The net elevation lost from the trailhead to the campsite is negative 200. It's 200 feet elevation change. There's a little up and down in there. I don't know if you clicked on the email I sent to the map, you can actually see the route there. And it's exactly 5 miles, and it's flat, and you know, there's a little up and down, but it's no more than a couple hundred feet. And any little climbs are, you know, probably 50 feet. So you could easily walk that. And actually it would be great to have you come out and do that. The thing about that spot is that you have to do it in the winter or the spring or late fall, because it's like 120 degrees down there in the summer. It's 120 degrees. They have enormous problems with ticks and poison ivy everywhere. Yeah, I don't know if you could see in the video, but there's tons of, I mean, everywhere we're walking, there were tons of poison ivy stalks. Yeah, if we do it, we'll have to plan it for no later than April. I think every April, actually Scott takes a group of people down there every April. And actually he was telling me that he's been going down there for like 20 years, and he's taken several girlfriends camping down there in the winter. And you know, the weather, like you say, the weather was amazing. But you know, there's a reason the Nez Perce wintered there. It's because you know, that's the land there was, the weather there is just great in the winter. It's so mild. Although Scott said he has been there when it snowed, you know, so I would guess, I mean, he's been going down there for over 20 years, and I guess he's probably been down there 50 times or more, and he knows the area like the back of his hand. It was actually fun going with him because he was so knowledgeable about the area. So yeah, maybe sometime we can set it up. And like I said, he's going down April 10th, 11th, and 12th. But I think I'm gonna go. That's the same weekend that Brad's going, actually, down to Hell's Canyon over at Pittsburgh Landing, and I may try to take Taryn on that, that's also an easy trip, although it's a little tougher than this one. There's a little more up and down to it. So let's see. The reason the video is unlisted is because Eric makes the joke at the beginning about he doesn't want to be on YouTube, but Eric's actually a pretty private person. And so I talked to him about it, and I said, hey, you know, if you don't, I'll make this video and I'll share it with my friends, but I can make it unlisted, I can take it down if you're uncomfortable. And he said, well, can we just make it so it's unlisted? And so I did that for him. And you know, actually it's interesting because I love Eric. I mean, he's just such a great guy, and I feel like that video really captures what I like about him, with the sarcasm and you know, a little bit of silliness here and there, and the stories that he tells when we're at the campfire. You know, it's just, those are all the things I like about Eric and appreciate about him. And like I said, I feel like that video does a really good job of capturing him, the things that I appreciate about him. So I actually watched the video a couple times just because it makes me happy to see that. And I think that's one of those videos that I'm going to hold on to and keep for later viewing, you know, when I'm a little older. Why is Eric carrying 2 bags? Well, it's interesting. Eric hadn't gone backpacking in a long time, and actually both Eric and Scott, actually all 3 of them, Eric, Scott, and Pat, I mean, their packs, so my pack, including the guitar, was probably just over 20 pounds, and the guitar is 4.5 pounds, so it was really light. The other guys, I mean, their packs were probably 40 pounds each at a minimum, and they were carrying in wine and beer and like sausages, and you know, their tents weighed 3 times what mine weighed. I'm sure their packs by themselves probably weighed twice what my pack weighed. He had, you know, a ton of stuff, and then he had his camera bag, and he didn't want to strap. He wanted to have his camera so he could take it out and take pictures, and so he carried the other bag because it balanced him out. And everybody offered to, all the things that you offered. Scott offered to strap the stuff to the dogs. I offered to carry it or put it in my pack, but he was like, no, I'm going to carry it. And that's why at one point he says, what are we, 200 yards from camp now? When we were, you know, 2 miles or 3 miles still, and he's still carrying these bags. But he's macho. He is a Billy Bob Thornton kind of guy. Actually, I never noticed that, but I can kind of see how you would think that. He looks a little like Billy Bob Thornton. The question about my fancy tent. Actually, I'm going to cut in some video while I talk about this, because my fancy tent, actually, I ordered several weeks ago, two or three weeks ago, and I ordered the tent, but I actually also ordered a new backpack that was lighter, because the same company that makes the tent makes these really super lightweight packs, and they had one that had been returned that they were selling relatively inexpensively, like, I don't know, 40% off. And so I ordered that as well, and they both arrived, of course, yesterday, on Tuesday after the trip. So I actually set up the tent, and you're watching that video right now of the tent. So next time I'll take it, and the tent, both those things are super lightweight. So the backpack weighs 13 ounces, whereas the other pack I had weighed slightly over 2 pounds. The tent, so the tent comes in two pieces. It's got the bug net and bathtub that you can see at the bottom, and then the tarp over the top. And what I made with just the tarp, and my tarp by itself weighs a pound. This tarp weighs like 6 ounces. The tarp and the bathtub tent with the bug net combined weigh a pound. So it's super lightweight, and I would have taken it. And actually, you know, the super lightweight ground cloth that I brought, I think, you know, when I go to Hell's Canyon later, I may just take the ground cloth and that tarp, because you don't need the bug net this time of year. There's no bugs. So I guess if it's raining really hard, it's nice to have the bathtub bottom keep you a little more dry. But anyway, excited about the tent. Patrick, who's Patrick? Okay, so Patrick went to high school with Scott and Eric, and they were all friends. Obviously, Eric tells a story about going to Patrick's house and Patrick not going to get his mom when Eric got hurt. But Scott and Patrick actually both at various times lived in Alaska and actually worked as tour guides up in Alaska. They're both smart, eloquent, outgoing guys. They can talk to anybody. And then when they kind of jointly came back to Pendleton, I think independently, and they decided that they wanted to start their own tour company. So they spent 2 years and they did tours around Pendleton, and they made connections with people, and they put on like a little Western pageant and just did cool stuff like that. And they did that for 2 years and lived together and had a great time. You know, it's like the young man doing something cool and creative thing. And so that's really cool. Now Pat is married to a woman who's a judge. He lives in Hermiston. He's a elementary school teacher, and he rides a touring unicycle to keep in shape. And he does a lot of artwork, and he's heavily involved in his church and does a lot of youth group things, takes the youth groups down to Mexico and stuff. And he's got 2 kids who are, I think, 11 and 14 or something like that, 10 and 14. So, yeah, he was a really interesting guy. I really enjoyed getting to meet him. I hadn't met him before, or I had met him, but I hadn't really had a chance to talk to him. Yeah, so it's interesting because one of the things we talked about with Pat was that his wife carries a gun when she's working, and he was talking about how it really changes your outlook on the world when you're carrying a gun, and so it was interesting because nobody in our group was carrying a gun. You know, Scott was like, I thought about bringing mine, but it's just really heavy. So yeah, you know, nobody was carrying. And you asked earlier in one of your earlier videos about dealing with wildlife, and you know, the bears and cougars, you know, it's like getting struck by lightning. It's the same type of thing. You just don't really worry about it. It would be nice. I mean, I'm much more likely actually to slip and break my ankle than to get attacked by an animal. Or, you know, injure myself in some way. Let's see. The herd of stuff. Oh, the lost battery. Yeah, I banged I had the the camera on the trekking pole, and I think it bounced off my knee, and the battery flew off someplace, and I didn't realize it till sometime later. But I have a spare battery already. I'm filming on this camera actually right now, and I will replace the other one, so I have a backup. But they're not that expensive. They're like 20 bucks. I mean, that's expensive for a battery, but it's a rechargeable battery, and it's cheaper than a camera. The herd of things that you saw, a couple last things here. The herd was a herd of elk, and if I'd had my good camera, I would have zoomed in and you would have been able to tell. And it's too bad because they were just gorgeous out there. And actually Truman, Scott's dog, started chasing them, and that's why they ran over down the hill like that. Actually it's interesting because the tribe is getting rid of a lot of the wild horses. There's just too many. They're damaging the landscape, so they're culling the herd regularly, and they're trying to figure out how to manage that. It's been really controversial. But I don't think there are a lot of wild horses out there in that wilderness area, or we didn't see any. There's bighorn sheep and elk and mule deer we saw. I mean, the carcass that we saw was a bighorn sheep carcass, a female. And you asked about the foundations, and so I looked up. I knew these were mining works, but from Wikipedia it says that in the 1860s gold was discovered in the river deposits there, and so miners came flocking in, and it was completely unprofitable. I mean, actually it's crazy, you know, we're out there in the middle of nowhere, and there's road cuts across the, there's one point where when we were doing that steep descent, and I show a little, it's a mine shaft, and there's a ton of mine shafts, and they're just out there in the middle of nowhere, and Scott actually by the fire is telling a story about actually them trying to bring heavy equipment up to facilitate mining, and they never really found any gold. It was a huge loss. And Eric likes to, you know, that was Eric's sarcastic comment as we're coming in. He says, the Mining River, home of grazing and mining. And the crazy thing is that the natural resources there are really valuable for purifying water and for, you know, and actually as the Nez Perce used the area for a winter place to live because it was so temperate. And of course, Europeans came in and tried to use it for other things, mining and cattle ranching, and it's just crazy because there's no way that the cattle ranching would be profitable without federal subsidies. I mean, basically they're allowed to run their cattle on public lands, and then they can barely scrape by as that is. It's just ridiculous, and it does so much damage to the water quality and to the landscape. And then the mining stuff, Sarah's going to play tennis. It was also, you know, incredibly, you know, there's mine tailings everywhere, there's old equipment, and the foundations of those, so actually the foundations were, what did it say? Remains visible on the Snake River, concentrated in the hard rock mining requiring complex facilities. Evidence of these developments is visible today, especially around the mouth of the Imnaha River. So it was in the 1860s, 1880s. And actually, they tried to homestead the area and put in ranches, but it's just so freaking hot in the summer that it doesn't work. So anyway, this was longer than I probably intended it to be, but I hope you're doing well. I will talk to you soon. Nikki, I hope you're doing well. That's my story. I'm sticking to it.